Namaskar, hello learners. I am Jaideep Sharma from the School of Social Sciences. Welcome to this session of teleconference, and I am from the School of Social Sciences. We'll be discussing information processing and retrieval, which we have been doing during the past teleconference sessions also. And in that, we'll be talking about indexing today. We have already discussed the structure of the whole course. We have also talked of Unit 1, where we discussed intellectual organization of information, and we'll continue with our discussions today on intellectual organization of information, wherein we'll be talking about indexing. This particular course, as we had discussed earlier also, is information processing and retrieval, also goes by the name information storage and retrieval in some universities. So basically, throughout the course in different blocks, we'll be talking about how information is organized, processed and retrieved. We'll be talking about the theory, philosophy, tools and techniques concerning all these different operations which come under information processing and retrieval or information storage and retrieval. You would remember that when we talked of intellectual organization of information, we had said that it is the intellect which is required in the organizing of this information that we are talking of. Because when you talk of organizing information in very simple terms, we can also say at times listing also. But indexing is not merely listing. It goes beyond listing. If you see here on the screen, you will find that we have given what is indexing, and very simple terms we say it is the process of preparing an index. But then what is an index? Therefore, if you see here further, we have defined index that it is a systematic guide to the items contained in or the concepts derived from a collection. So it's not that simple that we just list the items. You have to know what are the concepts that are discussed in a document. This document could be anything, and we have to know those items, we have to know those concepts. And if you see the second part of this, it says you have to systematically put them in particular order. You have to systematically arrange them in particular order. So the first thing is you know what it is, then you put it in a way that people find convenient to lay their hands on that information. So these are the two main processes that are involved in preparing an index or are involved in the process of indexing. So as the concept is discussed as one course, it is not that simple. As you see from the term, you can yourself imagine that if you are to prepare an index to a document, it could be a chapter, it could be an article, it could be a number of chapters. You would find that you need to know the concept, then only you will be able to prepare the index. A little more into the definitions quoted from the British Standard, it says that it is, I quoted from the British Standard definition, it says a systematic guide to the text of any reading matter or to the contents of other controlled documentary material comprising a series of entries with headings arranged in alphabetical or other chosen order with reference to show where each item indexed is located. So you can very well see in this definition also that when you need to prepare an index, you can just not think that it is listing things. You have to know those things. Now, what are the characteristics of an index? The characteristics of an index says that it is a guide to the items in a particular collection. It is the guide to the items or concepts in a collection. When you say concepts, you can very well imagine that this is something intellectual. It is not the terms, it is the ideas behind those terms. What ideas are there behind those terms, that an indexer has to know, and you have to systematically arrange. And why you are all doing that? You want to have an easy retrieval. That is why I said the name of the course is also information storage and retrieval. Now, indexing is at times implied in general terms also. We have author indexing, title indexing, keyword indexing, but then we as theory, as students, as learners of indexing, we study it as subject indexing and particularly when you talk of subject indexing, it says that it involves assigning subject headings to documents. And when I say document, it could be anything. As I said, it could be just a page, it could be a standard, it could be a patent, it could be an article. So you have to process is to identify and assign subject headings to documents, and you will be able to do it only if their subjects are known to you and you are helping researchers or information retrievers to gain access to that information. Another definition from a very classic document, that is UNESCO Handbook of Information Systems and Services, that was authored by Arthurton, and I quote from that about subject indexing. I quote, refers to the process of identifying and assigning labels, descriptors or subject headings to an item so that its subject contents are known, and the index thus created can help in retrieving special items of information. So you can see here different terminology for an index terms. These are labels, descriptors, subject headings, and if you see broadly, though little different from the concept index, but then the class numbers or call numbers that we have known are also something related to that only. We'll discuss that a little later. So as I was mentioning to you earlier, that when you talk of an index, you think about certain other terminology also, some other concepts that denote something related to an index, and these lists are, the list is there on your monitor, that these are different finding tools, because when you use an index, you really use it to find. And you see these as mentioned here as list, contents list, inventory, catalog, index, bibliography, references. Now catalog, when you say catalog, you have all seen it and we have read about it also in our bachelor's degree in BLI 223. You remember that when you talk of cataloging, you do it from two different points of view. One is the bibliographical details, the other is the subject details, and you all know that this is done in any scheme whichever you use, that in bibliographical details you give the author, title, publisher and other details, and in subject you tell about the aboutness of that document, what it discusses, what it is all about. And for that we make use of the different standards, different codes, and also we make use of the list of subject headings, or we may also make use of the chain procedure or the chain indexing as was given by Ranganathan. Now there is a little different when you talk of subject indexing or subject cataloging. The little difference is that when you talk of macro documents, as Ranganathan used to say, when you are talking from the point of view of a library, you make use of subject cataloging. But when you are talking about information per se, you want to provide access to that information, you make use of the term indexing, and this is a slight difference, and therefore this is there in your screen also, that the purpose of indexing is classification is grouping and arranging, but it is only the type of items that you are referring to, because the type of clientele is different, the purpose is different. And when you talk of classification or cataloging, you want to provide access to the documents that are limited to a particular library or a number of libraries. But when you are trying to provide indexing, it could be the information that is there in the documents, or it could be along with that document, or it could also be independent of that document. You find that there are indexing services, there are these such services are really very beneficial, because these take you to the primary literature. So this could be part of these, or these could be independent. Now there is a process of indexing, as we said, intellectual organization of information, that the first step in the process of index is subject analysis, and subject analysis involved the maximum intellectual organization, the maximum intellectual effort, which these days is, for this also we are trying to make use of machines. When you are talking of digital information, we are making use of software, we are making use of artificial intelligence also. But then when you are talking of manual systems, this involves the maximum intellectual effort, though the automated systems are also designed parallel to what we do, how we do. So we should know the theory about it, then we can talk in detail about how it goes about in manual systems or automated systems. So the subject analysis is the very first part in the process of information processing and retrieval, or information storage and retrieval, and this involves knowledge organization or classification or indexing, and for that one should have the domain knowledge. That is very important. And also while analyzing, because the first part is domain knowledge, you should be either a subject expert or you should be aware of that subject, the ramifications of the subject. The other part is you should know for whom you are doing, what are their requirements, what is their level, what is the purpose. Accordingly, you while you analyze, the next step is very important, that is subject representation. So after having done analysis, you have to represent that subject, and for that again you have to keep in mind the user also for whom you are doing it. And also when you use the subject analysis that you have done, when you represent it, you need a language for that, and that language could be indexing language or could be a classificatory language. Again, when you talk of classificatory language, though both languages are ordinal in nature, but when you talk of classificatory language, it is pure notation that you make use of, and notation is there because you want to mechanize that information, and you want to mechanize because you want to retrieve it. Therefore, you make use of artificial notation which is ordinal in nature, whereas in case of indexing, you make use of verbal equivalents, but then that is not as we do it in language. Therefore, it is little different. It is not like language, we say it is not like natural language. You make use of language which is particular to a system, and that is what is indexing language. Now this language is for organizing, and as I said, whether you do classification or indexing, you have to organize, and the analysis that you have done in the first step, you have to represent it in terms of notation or verbal equivalents. So as you see here in this slide, in the classificatory language, it is the notation that you make use of because you have to mechanize, whereas in an indexing language, you have to have verbal equivalents, and you cannot make use of the natural language because there are so many such natural languages, and that would result in different arrangements. And also there are difficulties with language because the concepts could be expressed in different ways, and also not only concepts in that particular document that you are indexing, all other documents which discuss that concept have to be kept in mind. Therefore, when you talk of indexing, when you are talking of analysis and you are talking of indexing all such documents, you have to think the different ramifications of that subject. You have to think of aligned subjects. You have to also think of distantly related subjects, and that is what you would remember what Ranganathan had given as apupa, the alien, penumbral, umbral, and similarly the penumbral and aerial. So such should be the arrangement, that you have to keep in mind the focus, the subject in consideration, but also those related to it. That is also mentioned as Cosco relationship. You have to think of coordinate, subordinate relationships of the subject with other subjects, and also those which may be hierarchically related or non-hierarchically related. Now let us talk of the characteristics of an indexing language. You see here on your screen that when you talk of the characteristics of an indexing language, these are discussed under three heads: the semantics, the syntax, and the syntactics. So these are three important characteristics of an indexing language. When you talk of semantics, we are talking from the point of view of the inherent concepts that are there behind those terminology that you have used, and the concept could be such that they could be hierarchically related or non-hierarchically related. Those concepts which are hierarchically related, you see here on your screen, we have given some examples. These could be genus-species relation, these could be whole-part relation, or these could be instance relation. I'll give you examples of each of these different types of relationship by giving you examples from daily life as well as from different subjects. Similarly, non-hierarchical relations could be equivalence relations or associative relations. I'll try to simplify a little bit why we are talking of all these sorts of relations. As an indexer, when you are indexing knowledge or information, you have to think beyond the terminology. You have also to think beyond what is there with you which you are indexing, because you have to see all those which are there as the concepts which you have to keep in mind. Therefore, you talk of all these sorts of relationships. Now, if you see here on your screen, I have given examples of genus-species relationships. You all find that the first on the left hand side is genus, and on the right hand side followed by dash is a species, like index, subject index, continents, countries, academic libraries, school libraries. These are related to each other as genus and species. So since they are related, when you index, your indexing language should allow all such information, all such subjects should be placed close together. Such should be the characteristic of your indexing language. Similarly, whole part relation. It is one whole and a part of it. These are also related to each other. So if you are describing a whole, you should be able to put the parts alongside the whole in some particular order. I have given some examples here on the screen on whole part relationships, and these should be manageable by your indexing language, because you want to make it easy for retrieval. You have the main purpose of your information processing retrieval system is you want to make it easy for the user, easy for the reader, easy for the person who is researching in that area. And similarly, if you find here, you see here on your screen, I have given example of instances also, like a particular type of concept and its different instances I have given here, like countries and India, rivers and Ganges. So these are some examples of instances. We should see that these also should lie near to each other, because you want the person to easily lay hands on the information. Now these were all hierarchical relation. They were related to each other at different levels, a higher level, lower level, higher level, lower level, like that. So these are the hierarchical relations, as you have the parent-child relationship. Similarly, the other type of relations are non-hierarchical relations, and out of those non-hierarchical relations, one of the types of relations is equivalence relations. Because when we express concepts in terminology, we may make use of synonyms, homonyms or homographs, and these are called to be equivalence relations. And if you see here on your screen, some examples of equivalence relations are lift, elevator, life sciences, biological sciences, fishes, spices, or common salt and NaCl. So these are some equivalence relations. Similarly, there are lexical variants also when you make use of language, and these are in the form of singular, plural, or also in other ways. If you see here some of the examples I have given, and these may be done in different ways in different indexing languages. Lexical variants, some examples are noun phrases, adjectival or adverbial phrases. Similarly, we make use of acronyms and abbreviations also. So we need to keep in mind that when we are making use of an indexing language, to bring in uniformity, to bring in consistency, because otherwise it affects the recall and precision while a person is searching, because the way you have indexed things, similarly a person has to search also, because the process of information storage and retrieval, we have talked of analysis, we are talking of representation, but while analyzing we are talking of different types of relationship. If the analysis does not match the search process, when a person analyzes from the user searching for information, when he and the person who has indexed, if their approaches do not match, it will result in a problem. Therefore, it has to be uniform, and also different people doing it at different times should also do it in different same way, or different people doing it at different places should also do it in same way. Therefore, we need to have such things in mind. Now, as we were talking of associative relationships, which are non-hierarchical. Associative means the concepts generally happen together. If one concept is there, the other concept will also be there, as I have given here the example of neurology and nervous system, or we have also given the concept, very small generally used concept, the height and depth, or library or librarian, temperature or thermometer. So these are some of the examples wherein we are talking of the concept and tool, we are talking of the raw material or the product, or we are also talking of a generic term and a specific term, or we are also talking of opposites. These are also associative relationships. So we have to keep in mind all these while we design an indexing language. The next in series, when you talk of an indexing language, we have already discussed semantics. Next is the syntax. And syntax is very important for any language, but when you talk of an indexing language, you cannot use such an exhaustive syntax as you make use in our language otherwise, because it has to be precise, it has to be short, and therefore while doing that syntax, the rules of the indexing language have to be very properly framed, because the meaning should be conveyed. You all know that if the syntax is not, every language has its own syntax, and the syntax may differ with languages, and if you follow a syntax of one language for other language, the meaning conveyed will be different. It may be absolutely different, it may be just the opposite also. Therefore we should be very clear about the syntax, and an indexing language should have a syntax which is actually very unique, and therefore you need to know the indexing language that you are following if you want to use that syntax. Next in order is syntactics. As I had mentioned to you earlier also, the three characteristics of an indexing language: semantics, syntax and syntactics. And syntactics is taken care by referencing system of any indexing language, because you may follow a particular rule, but then if the user is doing it in some different way, the user follows some alternative approach, then that also should be taken care of by an indexing language. For that you have different types of referencing systems: C also, used for, narrow term, broad term. So all these provisions are there in different indexing languages. We'll be talking about all these in detail when we talk of different indexing languages. So, but till now you have to keep in mind that every indexing language has three characteristics: the semantics, syntax and syntactics, and we want to learn about them. We have to follow different characteristics very clearly. Now there are different types of indexing, and these are derived indexing and assigned indexing. Derived indexing is the one where an indexer makes use of the terminology that have been used in the text, whereas in case of assigned indexing, one goes behind that text, one goes in the concepts that are conveyed by the text, and we make use of a terminology that is controlled terminology or controlled vocabulary that we know, and thus we are able to convey things. So till now we have discussed about indexing in the part of information processing retrieval, and we have seen that while we make use of indexing, the process is that we analyze the documents. Here the maximum intellectual effort is required, intellectual organization of information is to be done, for which one should have domain knowledge, and while making use of an indexing language, we should know that every indexing language have different characteristics, and these are semantics, syntax and syntactics. We will be talking of different indexing languages in our further lectures. We'll talk of list of subject headings, the Library of Congress list of subject headings, or the SOSS list of subject headings. We'll talk of pre-coordinate indexing, we'll talk of post-coordinate indexing, we'll see what sort of differences are there in them, and then we'll also take up examples to discuss that. In case you have any doubts, any questions, you can please ask, or you can also mail to us. Thank you.